Hello, everyone. We'll give Leon a second to sort some technology sharing on his end. And while he does that, I will introduce our show today. Leon,
Perfect.
you can give me a thumbs up when you're good.
Yeah, I'm just sharing it now. We're golden.
Great. Thank you. Well, welcome to episode 25. Honestly, hard to believe, of the Practical Magic Show. I'm really excited for today. Leon, the show has evolved really since you and I met for the first time. Magic for me, I always introduce this. The idea behind the show is that there are some people in the world who create really amazing things, but it's really clear that it's full of force and effort and grinding and hustling. And,
Yeah.
I used to be that way. And there are people in the world who seem to create equally incredible lives, but do it in a way that seems to defy the rules, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that rule breaking for me is magic. And that's what the show is about. How do we reverse engineer the way people are able to create and then bring practical ways to do it into their lives? Now, the way the show has evolved for me, and you arrive at the perfect time, is that in all honesty, my hyper emphasis at the beginning was really amazing external life. And oh, by the way, seems really happy. Right. And so let's look at that. And the oh, by the way, has shifted now more to, hey, you seem like a magical creature, right? And through that, also happen to, oh, by the way, have an amazing life. And so thank you for being here. I'll introduce you. Leon is I always introduce from my perception, you've been a gift in my life, really, as you've arrived through a mutual acquaintance of ours.
Yeah.
And I see you really as a spiritual leader. You have the Center for Transformational Coaching, and you are a coach. And we always laugh about what's the title, who cares? But to me, and it seems that the people who know you, when I introduced you, were almost just met with a sense of like a deep breath of relief and fresh air. And so I'm really, really excited and honored and grateful to have you here to be speaking on what I've titled this episode as Real Magic. This idea that real magic is created on the inside. And to me, you are
Yeah.
a beacon for that. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. My goodness, it is good to be here. And what an introduction. What an introduction. Thank you. As you said, magic. What is that? I was thinking of that the other day in terms of the question, what does it mean to me to create magic? And this idea of this indescribable came up, like when something is inexplicable or indescribable, something that transcends my understanding of why it manifested or came into being. And I started to think, yeah, this is for me what magic is, that there's this mystery and awe to life, that things happen that I cannot comprehend, that there are inexplicable outcomes, inexplicable emotions, inexplicable connections that happen. And when you can live into the inexplicable and the unknown and the mystery, then you're living in that magical place, which is very different from a more linear, I'm going to create this and make this happen. Like, I'm not saying there's no intention in magic. There is intention. But there is a sense of being in awe of a life force, we could call it, that is conspiring to shower us with blessings. And when we can live into that, there is magic. And I have noticed, yes, that it all begins, as you said so beautifully, on the inner plane. And then it begins to express outward into the world.
It's already like, I just love the language that you're using. Mystery, showering with gifts. Would we, since we're talking about it beginning on the inner plane, would you like to lead me and you and anyone who's watching now or the replay later, just a moment to kind of like sink into the moment with some
connect
breath?
to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Yeah, because this is so vital. So yes, everyone who's watching, the invitation now is just to sit with us for just a moment here and allow yourself to take a breath with us. We can call it a cleansing breath, where you just release anything that may not be serving you in this moment, anything that is keeping you from being present here, perhaps distracted by something or someone. So that with your presence and our presence, we can create this co-creative learning space. And we can begin to feel those shifts in our inner being that are so vital to the journey of becoming magical in your life. So with that, I'll invite you back to this space with Vanessa and I, and just holding that kind of energetic feel as we go through this. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Even doing this every week, there's like a very frenetic energy that usually takes a couple minutes to dissipate. And now it's gone. So
now it's gone. Yeah, now we can settle in. Yeah.
What came to mind when we were doing that was, I think just about everybody, when they close their eyes and they take breath that way, can feel that shift in being. But it's so easy to lose that again and again and again and again as the day goes on. And something that has both guided me and tortured me on my evolution in my life is this idea that who we're being in any given moment is a choice. And so if it's okay with you, I would love to explore, at least kick off this creating real magic on the inside by exploring what choice really means.
Okay.
Yeah. In this exploration.
Yeah. So a little context may help. And the context is understanding, for me, what we can call transformative growth or soul growth or spiritual growth as a kind of context. And that means that for some people, we're moving from let's call it a zone of just being by default. I am just being myself in this world, and I'm going about the activities that I deem important, having the relationships and experiences, and I'm just by default being. And then something starts to awaken a sense that maybe there's more to who I am than I have conceived of before. Maybe there's more to this sense of self. And it begins a kind of journey that I call a transformational journey. And because we're moving from that default sense of being in the world, like I just show up as I am, through all the conditioned patterns and all the beliefs and expectations that have been layered upon me for a lifetime, I'm just being that, to this idea that perhaps I can make a choice around my way of being. There may even be a question before that around what is way of being. So there's an exploration there. Like, what is it? What is my beingness, right? Yeah. And that's a really hard thing to define. It relates to my sense of consciousness. It relates to my sense of self, my self-awareness. It relates to my energetic state. All of that kind of combines. It relates to my presence. And that may be the word that people best know to relate to. Like when you are being deeply present, that sense of self, the energetic self, the mindhood of self, all of that, who am I being in this moment? And we can call that our way of being. And they change all the time. In some contexts, they require a certain kind of way of being. Let's say I'm showing up in an organization and I have to be seen as this tough leader. So I'm going to put on this way of being or persona. We'll call it, the aggressive, tough leader, the driver, the make it happener. And that's a certain way of being. But then I go home and I've got my family and the way of being is very different. I may choose to be in that moment more gentle or more loving or more kind, or not. I may continue to be aggressive, whatever it may be.
And do you
so there's this sense of choice comes in. I was just going to finish by saying that the choice comes in and that I'm moving from the unconscious to the conscious. And what does it mean for me to choose that for myself? Who am I being?
And would you say that as someone is just beginning, or maybe not even, but like that the when you say default way of being, what I'm understanding you to mean is that there's not a whole lot of awareness that we are choosing this aggressive leader type and then shifting it in the family type, and it's more like we're more like unconsciously just showing up to whatever that role is and thinking that like our circumstances are defining more of who we're being.
Excellent. Perfect.
Let me make
Perfect.
it a little more
Yeah.
clear. It's like however we feel is who we're being in the moment.
Mm. Yes. And that unconscious choice or subconscious choice is often driven by a host of factors that have been ingrained into us from a very young age about what it means for us to be ourselves in the world and what's expected of us and how we survive. Survival instinct in different contexts has me showing up. So it's a lot of it is this condition / survival, survival energy that we are living into. And for the first time in our life, possibly we're noticing that I can make a choice here. I can live differently. Okay. So what's my choice? Who am I choosing to be in this situation? So there's a drama in my family. Say somebody explodes. There's this angry fight. Normally I might get pulled into the drama.
Yeah.
There I am in the drama. Okay. Other people say, well, I should be able to step back and look at the drama. So we move back a step and become a little bit more objective. And we say, okay, well, there's the drama happening. There's this negative situation. Maybe I can fix it or solve it. And we put on our solving solution hat and we try to figure it out and make it better, make it go away.
Yeah.
But none of that necessarily is about my inner experience and who I'm being in relationship to what's happening outside of me. And then comes at a point where I can make a choice. Okay, so this is happening, this drama, this conflict, this turmoil, or this amazing moment of joy that I'm having with my friends or with my family or at work. And we could still then make a conscious choice by just looking in and asking very quietly, who am I being right now? Who am I being? And am I aligned with my highest conception of who I want to be right now? Is this the me that I am? Those kinds of inner questions can be asked very gently. And they take us into awareness of choice. So that choice marks kind of a beginning of the journey, because just to make the choice doesn't mean that I become that overnight. These default ways of being have a mighty grip. And our ego has a mighty grip on the way that we show up in places. But it begins this journey that is really a journey into the core of who we are. That begins with us choosing, this is who I choose to be in this moment, in this situation. Let's say I choose to be peace. Okay, I choose to be more peaceful in my life. Okay, I notice I'm not peaceful a lot. I continually find that during the day, I am not peace 80% of the time. What would it look like for me to be peace 100% of the time? To be the living embodiment of peace. Okay, this is, let's say, where I begin with my choice. What would it take for me to be the living embodiment of peace, where every cell in my body is peace, that I am peace? And we start to realize, wow, there are a lot of barriers in me to peace. There's a lot of things that get in the way. And this gives us the opportunity to begin to unpack that, to look at the ideas about who we are, the beliefs, the limitations, the falsities, the half-baked truths that we've kind of allowed to make a home in our mind. Say, okay, these are the barriers in me to being peace. So this journey becomes a great unraveling of so much that we have been conditioned into or that we have taken on to get to the point where we are peace. So I call that the journey of transformation. That is massively challenging.
It is.
And yet, it is. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, and if it's okay, like I want to be relentless around this idea of choice. Like I just want to keep pulling it apart. And I'll tell you why, because I noticed several expressions in myself, in my clients, and how different that has looked over the years too. So what I notice when people first encounter this idea, it seems like, what do you mean it's a choice? Wait, no way is it a choice. What? And then they might, okay, maybe I get that I can sort of see that, but like you said, it kind of becomes this like fixing kind of a thing. And I'll tell you what I've noticed recently in myself, despite knowing and having a pretty, I think, way more than average experience with choosing. I have been having a real resistance to, don't you dare tell me I can choose my way of being. There's like a fighting it too, so I've noticed
Yeah,
there's, and so can we just, I don't even know what it looks like, but just make choice feel more granular?
sure. What part of you is resisting? What part of you is that voice that's saying, don't you dare tell me who to be? Like, what part of you is that?
Let me
Oh.
sit with that for a second.
Hmm.
It feels like fear, like a fear,
Hmm.
like it's a fighting feeling, like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that part of you that will resist, that will fight, that will demand for a different way.
Hmm. And I'm just thinking about it because it seems also like, and I don't want it to be a choice somehow. It
Okay.
feels easier if it's not.
Okay. So can I share a little bit a bit more? Because this is where things tend to get really, I find, fascinating for people. Because again, I'm talking about a journey of self-growth into a profound awareness of who we are beyond all the conditioned beliefs and ideas that we've taken on
Hmm.
about how we need to be in this world.
Hmm.
We're starting to notice that there are kind of yearnings at a deeper, maybe soulful level for us to be more, as I said, peaceful or compassionate or alive or well, or whatever it may be. There's that yearning, there's that knowing that this is my potential. So we go on this amazing journey, and people start to peel away and strip away and enter into and sink down into these new forms of selfhood that they may have never really experienced deeply and consistently before. And then they get to this amazing point where even that choice starts to fall away. And what they realize is that at the very end of the day, when it comes to who am I being, at the essence core of who I am, there is no choice. There never was. There is only that which I am.
Mm.
But you cannot ask people to go from the one spot and just leap into this other space and say, well, just be who you are. Because their understanding of who they are at that early point of the journey is still this half-baked potato kind of thing. All of that egoic self-concept stuff that we've been carrying for a lifetime is still there. So their idea and sense of self is still often very disconnected from that true essence. And so as they begin to heal, and I call it a healing journey, as they begin to heal these aspects of self and transform, they begin to recognize very intimately the essence self. And then that starts to become more prevalent in the mind, become aware of our experiences. I am. I simply am.
Mm.
And there never was a choice, Leon. And I sit at that moment and I have this wonderful smile and I go, you're right, there never was a choice. But choice marks the onset of a kind of journey, an essential journey where we're becoming conscious about our beingness.
I gotta sit with this for a second. It's one of those moments in life where you're like, some part of me that is disconnected from my brain is like, he's speaking truth. Pay attention. Wait, I'm 14 steps back. So hold on. Okay, wait a second. This is such a relief, you know? It reminds me of something a mentor said to me way at the beginning of my coaching career. She said, if you're looking for the moment where it all makes sense and you get it, she's talking about business, just forget it. You're never going to get there. And it was like, oh, thank God. You can stop trying.
Right.
It's a similar feel for me. Like you spend all this time trying to make a choice that isn't there in the first place.
In there in the first place. Right. So with that knowledge, that can help some people shortcut and maybe say, okay, I can begin to just pay more attention to essence self. But what I have noticed for a lot of people is that unless healing happens in some ways around many of these constructed ideas of selfhood, and I mean pain from trauma, disappointment, all of this that we carry as this armor so that we show up in the world safe, secure, protected. Unless we do the work around that, it can be very difficult for people to connect with essence self. It's kind of buried so deeply.
Yeah.
So there we can begin with choice.
I really like that you use the word healing, because I think a misconception about healing is that healing is only necessary when there's been some sort of trauma.
Right.
So could you talk a bit about healing and what that really means?
Yeah, I love those images, because that's what we're playing with. One image of healing is the idea that something's broken and I need to fix it. So I break my arm, I got to fix it. And it's a return to this normal functioning. But that's one image of healing. It's the most common, you might say. So therefore, this idea that I have to heal myself because I'm broken doesn't rest with all people. And in fact, it's not really the best image of healing by far. I much prefer the image of healing of movement into wholeness and completion. Movement into wholeness and completion. So what that means is, in human terms, that at the core of who I am whole and I am complete. I am light, I am love, I am radiance, I am all that. But there are these constructs and layers that I've taken on for a lifetime that have told me that I am not, I am this, I am that. I need to be this way or that way to survive, to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. I have to show up like this and like this and like this and do this and this. And soon we carry that as, our way of being in the world. So healing is nothing more than a sense of a returning to a remembrance of who we are. And sometimes that requires us to attend to, yes, very much attend to all of the egoic structures. And it doesn't mean it's traumatic that we had these experiences. For some people, it's trauma. Mm-hmm. But all human beings have a kind of shadow side, regardless of our past. And by a shadow side, this is a psychological term. It can refer to those darker aspects of ourself, such as greed or hatred, those energies and those thought patterns. We all have them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all see each other as separate at times, and I am not you, and you are not like me, and I at times hate you for it, and I'm angry at you. We all have that, regardless of whether we've had trauma. We've all had disappointments that we've carried that affected our life, every single one of us. And we carry this stuff around, often unattended. There's a beautiful book by Stephen Levine called Unattended Sorrow. And he talks about doing grief work. Now, most people think of grief work as, I've lost somebody that I love, and now I need to grieve. But he says we've got to change the idea of grief work. Grief work, he says, is when you attend to any sorrow that you have experienced in your life. Mm. Any disappointment, any past hurt that you've literally just stuffed away because you had to get on with life or show up as functioning, or because there was no one to talk to who didn't, or they didn't want to hear about your life problems, and we just stuff it away. So all of that, he said, is unattended sorrow. Mm. And we carry it, and it affects our inner experience. We carry these heavy bags. How can we be light in being when we truly, at some level of our mind, are carrying this? So this is all open for what I'm calling healing, which is to attend to that which is not reflective of the core of who I am. That to me is what healing is. Yeah.
A really beautiful definition of healing. Really beautiful.
And hopefully it gives permission to people to do the work. Because a lot of people, because of those images, then shy away from it. Say, well, I've stuffed it away for a lifetime and my life is pretty good. I've got a good job, good house, good family. I got a barbecue every weekend. I've got all the food I need to eat. Why do I ever need to attend to that stuff? Just keep it there in the shadowy side. But
Yeah.
the reality is magical creation comes from inner ways of being that are born of lighthood and magic. And when we carry that, there's an effect. Yeah.
So what's interesting, and I don't know, this is just, I always just trust my heart in these conversations. And what is coming up for me as you're speaking is something that was very healing for me to let go of, or really to take on, was the idea that I could attend to my real desires. Now, I
Mm.
think this was really fascinating because if you had asked me at that time what my real desires were, I would have given you a list of like, make X amount of money in my coaching career, have my book in an airport bookstore, which is a real desire. This conversation, what this person meant was to feel love and connection with my husband all the time, to feel
Mm.
settled and at peace in my life, to just wake up and have fun in my day. And it was this moment of permission to stop giving a shit about all this other stuff. And that, like, wait a minute, just feeling connected and in love with my husband gets to count as a desire. Like that never
Yeah.
really, and somehow that made the inner magic feel more accessible. Does that make
Mm. Perfectly.
And if that makes sense,
Perfectly.
can you tell me
Yeah.
why?
Yeah. 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 Because I think most of us are disconnected from our true desires. And we see the world in external terms. So it's very, very, oh, I see this magazine that has pictures of the world that fascinate me. I remember as a kid, National Geographic magazine, that was it. Like those pictures of the world. It's just like, wow, I've got to go see the world. I've got to be in that world. So it becomes an external desire. And that's perfectly okay. Those are normal, natural aspects of our humanity. But what's really happening at a deep inner level is that often we chase external desires to satisfy the internal yearning, to feel good about ourselves, to feel that we have a purpose, to feel we have a place, to feel that we're loved, to feel that we're noticed, to feel that we matter, that our lives are worth it. This is the deeper, deeper yearning. And often then we chase the external to satisfy those deeper yearnings. So it's not to say we shouldn't have those external yearnings. We do. We do. They are the things that can provide motivation into our lives and create unique lives that we live. But also recognizing what are they really serving is that inner sense of self-recognition, self-acceptance, self-love, self-value. So then the little things are just as important as the big things. The moment that you sit with a loved one and just sit with the phone nowhere near you and just be present can fill just as much as the book in the airport can fill, as long as we know what's really, really happening. At least this is my interpretation of, what you're sharing of your
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It makes me think about this conversation in almost halves. Like if we're talking about real magic being created on the inside, there's letting go
Yeah.
and unpacking and unraveling. And there's also like attending to and cultivating. Mine.
Yeah. I call letting come,
Ooh, I
letting
like
go and letting come. Right?
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can
Yeah.
we then talk just a little bit more about this, the letting come half? I really like
Yeah.
this because I know, and maybe, I don't know, maybe this is because there has to be some letting go before we can let come. But I feel like it's easy to get lost forever in the letting go and wonder why we're not having the other stuff come in.
You got it. You've got it. Right. I call these the dual dynamics of transformation, the letting go and the letting come, because they are dynamics that we have to work through. And you're right. It can feel like people attend to this letting go side for years sometimes. And because often there can be things that needed real attention, real unpacking and real unraveling and real healing of things. But it can come at the expense of noticing this emergent piece, like what's emerging in me that feels that is of my higher nature, my higher calling, my higher purpose, my higher value, and focusing on accessing that. Because if we spend too much time in the one side, you're right, it loses that sense of maybe balance or proportionality, and we can get lost in it. I've had people say to me, I feel like I've been doing this healing work for so long now, and I'm just kind of done.
Yeah.
Good. To me, that's the signal right there, that there is a readiness to attend more to what is really emerging and ready to come forth. But the same can happen if we just focus on the emerging. People can say, well, I want to create this and make this happen and make magic in the world, and I don't want to deal with any of this stuff. It acts like a kind of gravitational pull, right? It's like a hot air balloon trying to rise, but the ballasts haven't been cut yet. So it's just kind of, and you got to crank the engine harder and harder. It's like, does it really want to go? You have to cut the ballasts and then the balloon will rise relatively effortlessly. So there is that letting go and letting come. And letting come is vital. We have to connect and feel and know ourselves in that way.
And so I've been on both sides of this, and I can think of other people too, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, you got to be done with the healing. Like you got to and not good. You're good.
Yeah.
So because I think for me anyway, maybe because I'm more familiar with the letting go, the healing, I can picture what that can look like. How do we let come?
Yeah, good question. Good question. I don't know if there's a simple recipe. For me, it begins always with finding these quiet times. Like the idea of busyness and overriding our mind with stimulation and all of that. We have to find these quiet times where we can sit and tune in to ourselves and feel really deeply the sense of the emergent. It might be the emergent thing I want to create. It might be the emergent sense of just who I am. It might be an energy. It might be a light. One of the practices we work in the deep coaching work, we work a lot with transformative practices, and there are 9 of them. And people often say, well, what's the 10th one? And I say the 10th practice is to expand your capacity to be with light. Okay, well, what that means is that we have a kind of threshold for the amount of goodness and positive energy that we can feel, often that we can hold. If Gay Hendricks wrote this interesting book, he's a psychologist. He wrote this interesting book called The Big Leap, where he talks about a threshold of feeling good, and that when we surpass our threshold, we will do something to sabotage ourselves so that we come back down to our normality around feeling good. And most of us are not conditioned to feel very good for very long. So one day we're out having a wonderful dinner, everything's beautiful, and suddenly an argument happens, and that whole evening, poof. He said that's an example of how just a thought, a worrying thought, a negative thought can bring us back down. So how do we expand, right? We have to expand our capacity to feel good, to hold more and more positive energy. And I find that the easiest ways to do that begin with, again, that conscious choice around who I'm being. So if I'm choosing to be peaceful, or I'm choosing to be confident, that we're paying attention to that on an energetic level, that there is an expansive quality of being that has to happen. Like I can feel the energetic expansion of this, and I have to begin to learn to hold it. How do I hold light? Now it's very conscious. Now I'm moving into my day, holding this energetic state that I'm calling light or compassion or confidence. But it's a very conscious, deliberate attending to.
Yeah.
And then beginning to notice, how do I sabotage myself from those moments where just the smallest thing, and suddenly I'm not feeling that way anymore. I've disconnected. So it's a little bit of let's call it a game we can play. We're learning to ride our horse. I call it riding my horse. I'm riding my horse. And then suddenly, poof, I fall off. Oh, it hurts. It's painful. Okay. Again, the expansiveness. So that's how I work with letting come. It's our capacity to hold more and more positive energy in the totality of our being. And it's an expansive quality of self, of energy, of consciousness.
I really love that I use the word expanding your capacity, a lot. It's what my book is about. It was me taking that journey, realizing that as a mother, like, holy crap, I like my like love requirement just got upped like
Yes.
overnight, infinitely huge. Like, what? I can't give
Yeah.
much love. Like, that's infinite. She's a black hole for love. Like,
Yes. Yes.
it was just
Yeah.
awareness that, like, wow, I got to get bigger inside. And so I love that you use, I sometimes call it energy art. It's like, you got to
Mm,
move the energy around and like find out where it's stuck and see where it's not flowing where it wants to. And so I really
exactly.
like, I guess as a final question around that, can you give an example? I'm sure there are many of how someone could do that in a moment in their day.
In the moment in the day. Yeah. It's very conscious work. In other words, for me, it's from the beginning of my day, I'm setting an intention. This is where intentionality comes in. Let's call it intention around the choice. So again, giving myself a start to the day that connects with that intention. If I don't give myself the start to the day, I notice it's very easy to disconnect and then lose myself in whatever the day is bringing forth. Just again, reactive responding to whatever the day is.
Yeah.
So setting the intention at the beginning of the day and connecting with that energetic state or that way of being or whatever it is, that consciousness that I wish to be during the day, to really ground in it. Then I find that when I go through the day, I become much more aware quickly of when I'm not there. It's almost like this jarring feeling like, whoa, I'm not there. But then I have to do the thing, which is the kind of interrupt. Can I now in this moment kind of interrupt what is occurring in me? For me, it's often, again, just a moment of stepping back, taking a breath, sensing into that inner place of connection, feeling the expansion, and then returning to my day. And I can do that in any context. I've done that in the middle of meetings at work. 10 people around the table going off, and just suddenly I realize I'm not there. Push my chair back a little bit, reconnect with the intention, take the breath, expand into, and there I'm back where I want to be and present in the meeting. So the more we work with it in this way, the more, as I said, the moments when you're not there become like a jarring experience of altered selfhood. And that becomes its own signal. But it is a cultivated practice born of the choice that eventually what happens is we just become that way of being. Less and less do we need to even intend it. We are just that. And we carry it into our day, but still once in a while, oh, that happened. Oh, boy, did I react to that guy cutting me off in the car. Yeah. Holy, where did that come from?
Yeah. It really is practice, isn't it? Like,
it really is.
Of going to the gym or eating healthily. Yeah. Like, certainly the weeks where you food prep, you eat better, or where you schedule your workouts, you go more. But then as you go, it becomes more integrated. You just think about it less. And, the reality is if you miss one workout, whatever. But if you skip all of your workouts, it has
whatever.
A
big effect. Right?
But internally, we think about one workout a day over several years. Okay, great. I understand why this person is so fit and healthy. But this practice could happen 1,000 times a day, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the cultivation, right? Yeah. And it begins with the awareness of the importance of beinghood to our experience and to our ability to create magically. Because when we're in that beinghood place, when we start to be very expansive in these qualities of selfhood that are really true to who we are, life just starts to happen for you. And you pay less attention to making it happen, forcing it to happen, driving it to happen, visualizing and going for it. And a lot more, what am I surrendering to? What am I allowing? What am I noticing? What am I called to attend to? Where's my energy want to go today? And this expansive world of magic opens for all.
Oh, wow. It's such a, I'm not even going to poison that with anything else. That was perfect. Thank you. I think that's a beautiful.
You're welcome.
Wrap. I almost could see like a part two, like, let's explore this magical world a little further, shall we?
Actually, yes. that's still the question of what that looks like to live into. So
Yeah,
beautiful.
I think we
Yeah.
might need part two on that one. But for now, I know every experience of you shifts my being and opens up my intrigue for more. So for everyone else who is undoubtedly having that experience, um, where should they go? Where should they go to find out more about you and how they can shift their being and create their own
Yeah.
life?
Well, just with that, I have to invite people to my book, A Shift in Being. In the book, I talk about this journey of transformation that so many are on, this journey of awakening and transformation, so we can really understand those dynamics. Because I think an awareness of the dynamics normalizes things for people who may be struggling to understand why they're experiencing what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And then we also have these 9 practices I talked about, which are transformative practices, which enable us to shift ways of being, not so that it's constant, but that we are embodying those higher pathways of selfhood that we are yearning at a soul level to achieve. So yeah, Amazon has the book, A Shift in Being, and also my website, centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. Perfect.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I have to say that more than one person has told me that A Shift in Being is the best book on transformation they have ever read.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's a high honor. Thank you. It
Is
was
a
a labor of love. Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. There will be a part two, no doubt about it. This was
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank
really
you.
fantastic. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You're so welcome. And to everybody watching, thank you.